3rd of August 1900, Volume 3, God Operates Where There Is Nothing. As I was in my usual state, I was longing and searching for my loving Jesus. Then after I waited for him for a long time, he came and told me, "My daughter, why do you look for me outside of yourself, while you could find me more easily within yourself? When you want to find me, enter into yourself, go deep into your nothing, and there without yourself, in the most tiny circle of your nothing, you will see the foundations that the divine being laid within you, as well as the factories it raised in you. Look and see." I looked again, and I saw solid foundations and very high walls that reached up to the heavens. But that which stupefied me was to see that the Lord had done this beautiful work upon my nothing, and the walls were all walled up with no openings. One could see only one opening in the vault, which corresponded only to heaven, and in this opening dwelled our Lord upon a stable column that rose out of the foundations, formed over nothing. Now, while I was looking all stupefied, Blessed Jesus added, "The foundations formed over nothing mean that the divine hand operates there where there is nothing, and it never mixes its works with material works. The walls, without openings around, mean that the soul must have no correspondence with earthly things, in such a way that there may be no danger, that even a little bit of dust may enter, because everything is walled up well. The only correspondence that these walls allow is with heaven. That is, from nothing to heaven, from heaven to nothing. And this is the meaning of the opening made in the vault. The stability of the column means that the soul is so stable in good that there is no contrary wind that can move her, and my dwelling upon it is the sure sign that the work done is fully divine. Who can say what I understood about this? But my mind gets lost and is unable to say anything. May the Lord be always blessed, and may everything be for his glory and honour. End of the reading.
The 3rd of August, 1901, Volume 4. The soul who possesses grace has authority over hell, over men, and over God himself. This morning my adorable Jesus was not coming. Then, after much waiting, the Virgin Mama came, bringing him almost by force. But Jesus would escape. Then the Most Holy Virgin told me, "My daughter, do not become tired of asking for him. Rather, be importunate, because this escaping of his is a sign that he wants to send some chastisement, and therefore he escapes the sight of his beloved ones. You, however, do not stop, because the soul who possesses grace has authority over hell, over men, and over God himself. In fact, since grace is part of God himself, as the soul possesses it, does she perhaps not have power over that which she possesses?" Then, after much resistance, forced by the Queen Mama and importuned by me, he came, but with an imposing, serious appearance, such that one would not dare to speak. I did not know what to do to make him break that appearance so imposing. I thought I would come out speaking nonsense, saying to him, "My sweet good, let us love each other. If we ourselves do not love each other, who else can love us? And if you are not content with my love, who will ever be able to content you? Oh, please, give me a sure sign that you are content with my love. Otherwise I faint, I die." But who can say all the nonsense I spoke? I believe it is better to move on. However, it seemed that with this I was able to break that imposing air he had, and he told me, "Only when your love will surpass the river of the iniquities of men, then will I be content with your love. So think of increasing your love, for I will be more content with you." Having said this, he disappeared. End of the reading.
The 3rd of April, 1903, Volume 5. The more the soul strips herself of natural things, the more of supernatural and divine things she acquires. As I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus came for just a little, making me hear his most sweet voice saying, "The more the soul strips herself of natural things, the more of supernatural and divine things she acquires. The more she strips herself of the love of self, the more of the love of God she acquires. The less she tires herself in knowing human sciences, in enjoying the pleasures of life, the more knowledge she acquires of the things of heaven, of virtue, and the more she will enjoy them, as the bitter ones will convert into sweet. In sum, these are all things that proceed at the same rate, in such a way that if one feels nothing of the supernatural, if the love of God is extinguished in the soul, if one knows nothing about virtues and the things of heaven and finds no pleasure in them, then he knows reason well." End of the reading.
The 3rd of August, 1910, Volume 9. Voluntary sin upsets the humours of the soul. As I was in my usual state, Blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "Listen, my daughter, miseries, weaknesses are means in order to find oneself in the harbour of the divinity, because in feeling the burden of human miseries, the soul gets annoyed, gets bothered, and tries to get rid of herself. And in getting rid of herself, she already finds herself in God." Then, having placed my arm around his neck, he clung against my face and disappeared. Later, as he came back and I was lamenting, for he would run away like a flash without giving me time, he told me, "Since it displeases you, take me, bind me as you want, and don't let me run away." And I, "Bravo, bravo, Jesus, what a beautiful proposal you make me. But then, can this be done with you? You let yourself be bound and clasped as much as one can, but at the best moment you disappear and no longer let yourself be found. Bravo, Jesus, you want to make fun of me. But after all, do whatever you want. What I care is that you tell me where I offend you and in what I displeased you, that you no longer come as before." And Jesus added, "My daughter, do not trouble yourself. When there is true sin, it is not necessary for me to say it. The soul already perceives it by herself, because sin, when it is voluntary, upsets the natural humours. Man undergoes as though a transformation in evil. He feels as though soaked with sin he has voluntarily committed. Just as true virtue transforms the soul in good, the humours remain all in harmony among themselves, and her nature feels as though soaked with sweetness, with charity, with peace. So it is with sin. So have you perceived this turmoil? Have you felt as though soaked with impatience, with anger, with disturbances?" And while he was saying this, he seemed to look deep into me to see whether that was in me, and it seemed that it was not. And he continued, "You yourself have seen it." I don't know why, but while he was saying this, he showed more earthquakes with destruction of entire cities, revolutions, and many other troubles, and he disappeared. End of the reading.
The 3rd of August, 1916, Volume 11. Each act the creature does is one more paradise she acquires in heaven. As I continue in my usual state, my lovable Jesus makes himself seen in the passing, or he says a few words and then he runs away, or he hides in my interior. I remember that one day he told me, "My daughter, I am the centre, and all creation receives life from this centre. So I am life of every thought, of every word, of every action, of everything. But creatures make use of this life I give them to take the occasion to offend me. I give life, and if they could, they would give me death. I also remember that as I prayed him to hold back the scourges, he told me, "Daughter, do you think I am the one who wants to scourge them? Ah, no, on the contrary. My love is so great that I consume my whole life in redoing what man was obliged to do for the Supreme Majesty. And since my acts were divine, I multiplied into so many as to redo them for all and for each one, in such a way as to fill heaven and earth, and to keep man defended, so that justice might not strike him. But man with sin breaks this defence, and once the defence is broken, the scourges strike man." But who can say all the little things he told me? Then this morning I was praying and lamenting to Jesus, for he was not answering me, especially because he does not stop chastising. And I said to him, "Why pray if you do not want to answer me? On the contrary, you tell me that the evils will get worse." And he, "My daughter, good is always good. Even more, you must know that each prayer, each reparation, each act of love, any holy thing that the creature does, is one more paradise that she acquires. So the simplest holy act will be one more paradise. One act less, a paradise less. In fact, every good act comes from God, and therefore, in every good act, the soul takes God. And since God contains infinite, innumerable, eternal, immense joys, so many that the very blessed will not arrive at enjoying them all throughout all eternity, it is no wonder then that since each good act acquires God, God is almost bound to substitute them with as many contentments. So if the soul suffers even distractions for love of me, in heaven her intelligence will have more light and will enjoy as many more paradises for as many times as she has sacrificed her intelligence, and so much more will she comprehend God. If she suffers coldness for love of me, so many paradises will she enjoy of the variety of contentments which are present in my love. If darkness, so many more contentments in my inaccessible light, and so with all the rest. This is what one prayer more or less means. End of the reading.
3rd of August 1929, volume 26. When God decides to do works that must serve for all, in his ardour of love he puts everyone aside. How the Supreme Being possessed the inexhaustible vein. By continuing in my usual abandonment in the divine fiat, I feel it as though centralized over my little existence. I feel its immensity, its power, its creative and enrapturing strength, that it is such as it envelops me everywhere. It is not given to me to be able to resist it. But I feel happy with this, my weakness, and voluntarily I want to be weak in order to feel all the power of the divine volition over my littleness. While I was feeling sunken within it, my sweet Jesus, making himself felt and seen, told me, "My daughter, when our divinity decides to do universal works with the soul who is chosen as the first, to whom we entrust a work that must serve for the good of all, the ardour of our love is so great that we put everything and everyone aside as if no one else existed, and we centralize the whole of our divine being over her, and we give her so much of our own to the point of forming seas around her and of drowning her with all our goods. And we want to give so much because the ardour of our love leads us to never stop, so as to see in her our work accomplished, through which everything and everyone can enjoy and take the universal goods that our work encloses. With this, it is not that we do not see what the other creatures do, because our all-seeingness and immensity conceals nothing from us. We are aware of everything, and from us come the life and helps for all. But we act in such a way and behave as if nothing else existed. So we acted in creation, after having formed heavens, suns, earth, ordering everything with such harmony and magnificent as to be stunning. In creating man, we centralized ourselves over him, and the ardor of our love was so great, it overflowed so strongly that, forming a veil around us, it made everything disappear for us, while we saw everything, and we occupied ourselves only with man. What did we not pour into him? Everything. While it was the creation, there was the magnificence and beauty of our works. In man, there was not only the centralization of all our works fused in him, but what's more, the installation of our life. Our love overflowed. It gave itself no rest. It wanted to give always, because it saw in him all the human generations. So we acted in the Queen of Heaven. Everything was put aside, all the evil of the other creatures, and we occupied ourselves only with her. And we poured so much that she was full of grace, because she was to be the universal mother and cause of the redemption of all. So we are acting with you for the kingdom of our divine will. We are behaving as if nothing else existed. If we wanted to look at what the other creatures are doing, the evils they commit, the ingratitudes, the kingdom of our will would remain always in heaven. Not only this, but we would not even feel disposed to tell a single truth about our supreme fiat. But our love, forming its veil of love over all the evils of creatures, puts everything aside for us, and overflowing strongly, not only makes us speak about it, but what's more, makes us decide to give the great gift of the kingdom of our fiat to creatures. When our love is dead set on something, it seems it does not reason, and it wants to win by dint of love, not of reason. Therefore, as if it saw and heard nothing, at any cost it wants to give what it has decided. So this is why it has chosen for the great universal good that must descend for the good of all human generations. And this is the reason for the so much giving and saying to you, these are the ardors of our love that wants to hold nothing back. It wants to give everything as long as the kingdom of the divine will may reign upon earth. Then my mind continued to think about many things regarding the divine will, and my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, our supreme being is inexhaustible. We are never exhausted, nor can we say that we have finished giving, because as much as we give, we have always something more to give. And while we give one good, another one arises to put itself on the way in order to give itself to creatures. But as inexhaustible as we are, we do not give our goods, our graces, nor do we tell our truths to one who is not disposed, to one who does not pay attention to listen to us in order to learn our supreme lessons and model her life according to our teachings, in such a way that we may see our teachings written in her and see her enriched with our gifts. If we do not see this, our gifts do not depart from us, nor does our voice reach the hearing of the creature. And if she hears anything at all, it is as though of a voice that comes from afar, such that she is unable to comprehend clearly what we want to tell her. Therefore, our inexhaustible vein is arrested by the lack of dispositions of creatures. But do you know who gives the true dispositions to the soul? Our divine will. It empties her of everything. It reorders her. It disposes her in an admirable way, in such a way that our inexhaustible vein never ceases to give and to let her hear its sublime lessons. Therefore, let yourself be always dominated by my divine fiat, and our inexhaustible vein will never cease to pour itself over you. and we will have the contentment of making new graces, new gifts, and lessons never before heard arise from our divine being. End of the reading.
The 3rd of August 1931, Volume 29. Each act done in the divine will forms the nourishment to make the divine life grow in the creature. The greatest gift that God gives, the truth. I am always there in the centre of the divine fiat, though under the nightmare of the privation of my sweet Jesus. Oh, how painful it is to feel, escaping from oneself, that Jesus who loves me and whom I love. And while he forms my life of strength, of love, of light, his life of love, of strength, and of light escapes from within my life. Oh, what pain to feel life while the true life is not there. What torture, what torment. Oh, how I feel like repeating, there is no sorrow similar to my sorrow. Heavens and earth, cry with me, and all of you, implore for me the return of that Jesus who loves me and whom I love. So I abandoned myself more than ever in that divine fiat that no one can take away from me, not even Jesus himself. If he hides, if he makes some little escapes from me, but his divine will never leaves me. It is always with me, and my poor mind goes around everything that the divine fiat has done and does for love of us. And since I was thinking about its great love in creating us, my beloved Jesus, coming out from his hiding place, told me, "My daughter, the creation of man was the centre in which our divinity centralised all the goods that were to arise in the creature. We placed in him divine life and divine will, human life and human will. The human life was to serve us as dwelling, and the two wills fused together were to live life in common with highest accord. Even more, the human will was to take from ours in order to form its acts, and ours was to be in continuous act of giving of its own, so that the human will would remain modelled and fully moulded in the divine will. Now there is no life, whether human, spiritual, or divine, that does not need nourishment in order to grow, to be fortified, to be embellished, and to be happy. More so since we placed our divine life in man, because he was incapable of receiving all the fullness of our divine being, we placed in him as much as he could contain of our life, giving him the freedom to make it grow as much as he could and wanted. Therefore, our life in man, in order to grow, had need of nourishment. Here is the necessity to place a divine will in him. Our divine life would not have adapted itself to nourishments of human will, and therefore all the acts of the creature done by virtue of our divine will and in it would serve to nourish and make grow our divine life in her, in such a way that as she would gradually keep doing her acts in our fiat, now she would take our love and would nourish us. Now she would take our strength, now our infinite sweetness, now our divine joys to nourish us. What order, what harmony we place between him and us in creating man, to the extent of asking for our own nourishments through him, not because we needed it, no, but in order to maintain the ardour of love, the correspondence, the inseparable union between him and us. And while he would occupy himself with us, we would occupy ourselves with nourishing him and with preserving our dear dwelling. Not only this, but giving him other more beautiful gifts to render him happier, love him more, and make ourselves be loved more. But do you want to know what our most beautiful gifts are that we give to the creature? Manifesting to her a knowledge of our supreme being, a truth that belongs to us, a secret of ours, is the most beautiful gift that we give to her. Each of these gifts is one more bond that we place between her and us. Each truth of ours is a property that we place in her soul. And therefore, in the soul in whom our will reigns, we find our divine nourishments, our properties, for as much as is possible to creature, our dwelling. So we find ourselves in our home, in our centre, in the midst of our properties. See then what it means to let our will reign and the great good of making our truths known to you. Each of our knowledges brings its own distinct gift. One brings its light, one the strength, one the goodness, one the wisdom, one the love, and so forth. Each of them binds the creature to God in a special way and God to her. Therefore, know how to correspond to the many gifts that your Jesus has given you and live always in our will. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.